This happened not long ago, maybe 6 or 7 months back. I was at a Walmart in a quiet little town called Creekside, Oregon. It was a Wednesday night, sometime after 10 p.m. The place was practically empty. Just a couple of late-night stragglers, an employee or two pushing carts, and that constant low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I had stopped by after work to grab a few things. Some detergent, a USB cable, snacks, nothing major. You know how it goes. You come for one thing, end up strolling half the store. After a while, I found myself wandering into the seasonal section, then into the home goods aisle, just kind of aimlessly browsing. There was something calming about the emptiness of the store that late, until it wasn't. Eventually, I drifted into the back half of the store near the toys. That part was dimmer for some reason, maybe poor lighting or just fewer overheads turned on. I wasn't planning to buy anything from there, but I stopped to check out a small massage cushion display they had out. My back had been killing me from long shifts. I was reading the side of the box when I heard it. Faint voices, just around the corner in the next aisle over. At first, I didn't think much of it. Just a man talking to a kid, maybe a dad and his daughter. The guy had a low, scratchy voice. He said something like, "You can pick any one of these, okay? Anything you want." The girl didn't say anything back. I didn't hear her at all, actually. Then the man said, quieter this time, "It's all right. Your aunt said it's fine. Just come with me." Like he didn't want anyone else to hear. I stayed still for a second, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I was being weird. Maybe I was tired. But then he said again, "Come on, it's fine. Just hold my hand." Now, I don't know what made me do it, but I had this sudden, sharp gut feeling that something wasn't right, that this wasn't a normal interaction. I told myself I'd just casually walk by, maybe catch a glimpse, just to reassure myself it was innocent. So I left my aisle and made a slow turn into the toy section, and sure enough, halfway down the aisle, I saw them. A man in a baggy gray hoodie, jeans that were a little too long, worn sneakers, and a black beanie. He was holding the hand of a little girl. She looked maybe 6 or 7, blonde hair tied up in a messy ponytail. She was wearing pink pajamas, which struck me as odd. He was leading her down the aisle, and neither of them were talking. What got me wasn't what they were doing, it was how she looked. Her face was blank. Not scared, not upset, just empty, like she wasn't there at all. I had to think fast. I didn't want to come off like some lunatic, but I also couldn't just walk away. I grabbed a random toy off the shelf, a squishy dinosaur thing, and approached them like I needed help choosing it. "Hey man," I said casually, "you think this would be a good birthday gift for a 6-year-old girl?" The man turned to me, surprised. His eyes were pale, almost yellow in the harsh lights, and his skin looked clammy. That's the only word for it. He gave me a look that was polite but clearly impatient. I don't know. I don't have kids," he said, glancing down at the girl like he forgot she was even there. "Oh, I just thought, sorry, I assumed she might be yours," I said, nodding toward the girl. No, just watching her for a friend," he replied too quickly. "We gotta head out, she's tired." I gave a half smile and let him pass. He led the girl toward the far end of the aisle, away from the front of the store. I watched them disappear around the corner and just stood there, unsure. Maybe it was legit. Maybe it wasn't. I felt like I was overstepping, like I was reading into something too deeply. So I turned back toward the main aisle and started walking in the opposite direction. Lena, where are you?" I stopped in my tracks. The voice came from a few aisles over toward the clothing section. I followed it and found a woman in her 30s, pacing in circles near the kids' clothes. She looked around frantically, pulling hangers apart and peeking under racks. I walked up to her. "Ma'am, are you looking for a little girl?" I asked. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Yes, my daughter, Lena. She was just with me. I turned around for 2 seconds. My mouth went dry. "I think I just saw her. She was with a man. He said he was watching her for a friend, but it didn't feel right. He was heading toward the back of the store." Her face changed instantly, from confusion to fear. "Where?" she demanded. We didn't wait. We ran, both of us, pushing past carts and shelves. I remember the sound of her boots hitting the floor, the way she kept calling Lena over and over. I pointed toward the aisle where I had last seen them. But it was empty now. No sign of them at all. We made it to the front of the store and flagged down an employee at self-checkout. I told him what happened, fast and urgent. The woman was shaking. The employee's eyes widened and he grabbed a manager. Within seconds, someone got on the intercom. "Security team, initiate code gray. Check all exits immediately." They started scanning the exits. Front doors, loading docks, even emergency exits. The store went into a soft lockdown. A couple of employees blocked the entrances while others checked cameras in the back. After about 10 minutes, one of the security guys called us into the office to check the footage. We watched the toy aisle camera. Sure enough, there I was, holding that stupid dinosaur toy, talking to the guy. He looked just like I remembered. Gray hoodie, beanie, scruffy beard. But then something made the hairs on my neck stand up. In the footage, there was no little girl. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, thinking maybe she was just out of frame, but no. When he turned and walked away, his hand was empty. It looked like he was pretending to hold someone's hand. I told them that couldn't be right. I saw her. She was right there. Her pajamas, her ponytail. I spoke to them. The security guy rewound it again and again. Same thing every time. The manager leaned in and said quietly, "There's another weird thing." Right after that, the footage cuts off. Only for about 20 seconds, but just before he reaches the back emergency exit. "Did the alarm go off?" I asked. They shook their heads. "Nope, nothing triggered." Just then, one of the floor staff knocked on the office door and poked his head in. He looked confused. "We, found the girl," he said. "She's fine. She was sitting in the clothing section, playing under one of the racks. Says she never left her mom's side." The mother rushed out to see her, sobbing with relief. But I stayed behind, watching that footage one more time. There I was, clear as day, talking to a man who was walking through the toy aisle like he was leading someone who wasn't there. Even now, months later, I don't know what I saw. But I know this much. Someone, or something, was in that store with us. And whatever it was, it wanted a child. I used to work overnight shifts back in 2016 at this dusty warehouse outside Tucson. The hours were brutal, random, long, always changing. That night, I clocked out at about 2:45 in the morning. I was beyond tired, body aching, mind foggy. The only thing keeping me going was how hungry I was. You know that dead-of-night hunger that makes everything sound good? I had that bad. Nothing else was open nearby. No gas stations, no diners, not even a fast food place. Just the 24-hour Walmart off Old Vale Road. It sat at the edge of this weird industrial zone, kind of isolated. I had driven past it hundreds of times but never actually stopped there at night. The parking lot was nearly empty when I pulled in. Just a few scattered cars, probably employees. The lights were buzzing faintly overhead, that awful pale blue glow that makes everything look sick. I grabbed my hoodie, stepped out, and made my way through the automatic doors. Inside was even quieter than I expected. No music, no beeping from registers, just silence, except for the soft clatter of carts and the occasional sound of someone restocking shelves off in the distance. I headed straight to the snack aisle. I wasn't sure what I was craving. Chips? Jerky? Something sweet? I just wandered, staring blankly at the options. I was there for maybe 5 minutes, lost in indecision, when I felt it, that weird shift in the air like static pressure. Like something had just entered the space behind me. I turned around casually, thinking maybe another shopper had come down the aisle. But it wasn't that. At the very end of the aisle stood a man. He was just standing there, not moving. Tall, thin, dressed in a baggy gray hoodie with the hood pulled halfway over his face. I couldn't see his eyes clearly, but I could tell he was facing me, just watching. Not browsing. Not doing anything, just standing. I kind of froze for a second. Not out of fear exactly, more confusion. I looked away, pretending to be busy checking the label on a bag of popcorn, and when I glanced back, he hadn't moved. Still locked in that same stiff posture. I wasn't ready to assume the worst. I figured maybe he was just weird. Maybe he worked there or was waiting for someone. Still, something about him felt off. I decided to move to the next aisle over. Chips and dips. Maybe if I walked away, the feeling would pass. I turned the corner, but it didn't. The next aisle over was stacked with cereal and canned fruit. I tried to focus on the shelves, but I couldn't shake that weird pressure in the back of my head. Like eyes were still locked on me. And then I felt it. Movement. I looked up, and there he was again. Same man, same hoodie, standing at the far end of the aisle. Not walking, not shopping, just watching. He hadn't made a sound. No footsteps, no squeaky cartwheels. He had just appeared there. Something about the way he stood. It wasn't casual. It wasn't hesitant. It was like he knew exactly where I was going to be. I stared at him for a second, trying to read his face, but it was hard to see under the hood. His skin looked pale under the flickering ceiling lights. His hands hung stiff at his sides. He didn't flinch when I made eye contact. Didn't look away. Didn't even blink. I turned and moved fast to the drink aisle. Energy drinks, bottled water, sports drinks, anything to act like I was still shopping. My eyes scanned the labels, but my ears were tuned behind me. Listening. Nothing. Then I caught something in the corner of my eye, his reflection in the refrigerator doors. He had followed me again. I spun around. He was halfway down the aisle this time, closer, still unmoving. No words, no sounds, just his face, partially hidden by the hood, staring like I was some kind of target. Now my skin was crawling. I made a sharp turn and walked quickly to the middle of the store, trying to break the pattern. I passed toys, kitchenware, electronics. I didn't stop. I weaved randomly through aisles, doubling back, switching directions. I wanted to see if he'd keep showing up, if he really was following me. He did. Every single time I turned a corner, there he was, somehow ahead of me or standing at the edge of the next aisle, perfectly still. It was like he knew where I was going before I did. He never walked past me, never approached, just watched. Every aisle, every turn. By now I was sweating, the kind of sweat you get when you know you're not just being paranoid. I thought about leaving, just ditching the snacks and getting out, but I didn't want to walk to the parking lot without knowing where he was. So I turned toward the back of the store, thinking I'd lose him near the frozen foods. That section had wide open space and better lighting. I pushed through the swinging plastic curtain strips and walked into the freezer aisle. For the first time in 10 minutes, I didn't see him. I walked slower, trying to calm myself. Maybe he had finally left. Maybe he was just messing with me. Then I caught his reflection again. He was back, standing behind me in the glass doors, closer than before. I didn't turn around this time. I just walked, straight for the front of the store. I didn't run. I didn't want to draw more attention to myself, but my walk turned into more of a fast march. The aisles blurred past me as I beelined it toward the front checkout lanes. Every part of me was screaming to get out of that building. There was only one register open. A young woman stood behind the counter, maybe in her early 20s, half asleep, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even look up at first when I dropped a couple of random items onto the belt. Some trail mix and a bottle of soda I didn't even remember grabbing. While she scanned the items, I leaned in a little and kept my voice low. "Hey," I said. "Some guy's been following me around the store. I think he's still here." She finally looked up, slowly, and her eyes flicked past me toward the aisles. I could see something change in her expression. Her mouth pressed into a tight line, and she nodded once. "I've seen him before," she said, almost in a whisper. That stopped me cold. "What do you mean? Like, tonight?" "No," she said without meeting my eyes. "A few times. He never buys anything, just walks around." I waited for her to say more, but she didn't. Her hands moved faster now, scanning the last item, typing something into the register. I pressed her a little harder. "Did anyone ever talk to him? Security? Managers?" She just shrugged. "He disappears before anyone gets to him. I don't think he even sets off the door sensors." That last part didn't make sense to me, but I didn't ask any more questions. I looked over my shoulder. He was gone. Not at the end of the aisle. Not anywhere I could see from the front. The weird part was, I hadn't seen him leave. I'd kept my eyes sharp since the freezer section. It was like he'd evaporated into the shelves. I paid in cash, not wanting to take the extra seconds waiting for my card to process. She handed me the change without a word. I grabbed my bag, nodded at her, and turned to leave. As I approached the sliding doors, I checked every corner. My heart was pounding again. The parking lot was visible through the glass, dim, still, the kind of empty that feels dangerous. The automatic doors slid open with a hiss, and the cold night air hit me in the face. I stepped out, trying to keep calm. My car was parked a decent walk away, maybe 5 or 6 rows from the entrance. I'd parked under one of the few flickering overhead lamps. I walked quickly, clutching the plastic bag in one hand, my keys tight in the other. Each step echoed louder than it should have. I passed a few scattered cars, no one inside, no engines running. When I reached my car, I unlocked it fast and slid into the driver's seat, locking the doors behind me with a solid click. I tossed the bag on the passenger seat, shoved the key into the ignition, and turned it. That's when I saw the motion in the rearview mirror. Someone was running. Fast. I leaned forward and stared. It was him. Not walking, not watching. Running. Full speed, sprinting from the far side of the building straight toward my car. Arms pumping, head low, hoodie still up. His feet didn't even seem to hit the pavement right, like he was gliding across the lot. There was no hesitation in his path, no confusion. He was coming straight for me. For a second, I froze. It was like my brain refused to process what I was seeing. His speed, it wasn't normal. It was frantic, almost animal. His legs moved like they were working on instinct, not thought. And his arms, they didn't swing right. They jerked, twitched, like a puppet being pulled by strings. That second of hesitation nearly cost me. He was closing the gap fast. I slammed the car into reverse, tires squealing as I backed up so hard I nearly clipped the cart return behind me. I twisted the wheel, slammed it into drive, and punched the gas. Just as I started pulling forward, he reached my car. I heard it. The sharp thud of his hand slapping against the rear panel. Not a knock. Not a punch. Just a flat skin-on-metal slap, like he was trying to grab hold of it. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I drove straight across the lot, not even bothering to follow the lanes. My tires bounced hard over a speed bump as I veered toward the exit. I caught one last glance in the rearview mirror. He was still chasing me, still running. Most people would have stopped, given up, but not him. He was still coming at me full speed, his hoodie flapping wildly, his face twisted in something halfway between focus and fury, and then he just stopped, right at the edge of the parking lot. As if there was an invisible line he couldn't cross. I didn't wait to see what he'd do next. I flew out onto the main road, my hands white-knuckling the steering wheel, breath coming in short gasps. Only when I hit the highway did I finally slow down. My body was still shaking when I got home. I locked every door, every window, turned on every light. I barely slept that night, and when I did, I kept seeing him, standing there, watching, running. The next day I searched the news, checked every local outlet, police blotter, even social media. Nothing. Not one report of a man stalking people at Walmart. No mention of a guy in a hoodie, no late-night chases, nothing. But I didn't stop there. I went on Reddit and found a local thread for Tucson horror stories. Most were junk, urban legends, ghost stories. But then I saw a post titled, "Man in Gray Hoodie, Walmart, 3 a.m." It was dated just a week before my visit. The user described almost exactly what happened to me. Word for word, it lined up. Quiet store, man watching him, following him aisle to aisle, then sprinting at him in the parking lot. The post ended abruptly. No replies, no follow-up. The account hadn't been active since. I left a comment asking if he was okay. I never got a response. That was the last time I ever went to a Walmart after midnight. I don't care how hungry I am or how empty the fridge is. If it's past 10 p.m., I'll go without. Because somewhere out there, in some dim, empty store lit by flickering lights, he's still watching. And maybe next time, he won't stop at the parking lot line. If these stories sent a chill down your spine, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe for more eerie tales. What would you do if you were caught in one of these unsettling situations? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear what's on your mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next nightmare.